I wanted to switch to our next speaker, and I think this will be a very different tone as well. So I'm sure you will all appreciate that. Well, please welcome Bert Dumars. He's a Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research. And since 2013, he is a key lead on marketing innovation programs and labs for Forrester. He's an accomplished marketing executive with experience in leading digital and social media innovation for Fortune 500 companies and public sector. Before Forrester, he worked as a VP of digital marketing e-commerce for New Rubbermaid for 5 years, since 2007 through 2012. He had other marketing and technology leadership positions for U.S. Treasury, the IRS, any fancier? Trend Micro, Intel, and Dell Computer. He has a BA from Pomona College and MBA from the University of Michigan, Ross School of Business. Please welcome Bert.
Yes, I'm going to change this up. Okay. I've actually been traveling extensively for the last month, and I've been researching this space, marketing innovation, and a peer of mine actually wrote a book on digital disruption. And I will contend that change is happening a lot faster than any of us think in this room. In fact, it was funny, on the way over here before I left my house, because I work at home, my daughter was watching a video on an iPad. And I said, what is the name of this? And have any of you heard of Minecraft? You probably, some of you? Okay. So this was Minecraft Timeline in the Dragon Forest. Weird name. I'm watching this and I'm thinking it's like Legos or something like that. People are making videos in Minecraft, and then over the top, they're narrating those videos, and kids are watching them. And there's no advertising. And this is on YouTube. So she isn't seeing any ads. But she's getting entertainment that's made by essentially amateurs. That's the type of thing that's going on out there. These guys create a whole new network around, just like Angry Birds. So digital disruption is the ability for us to take advantage of free platforms and free services. And I'm going to open with an example. Have any of you read Wool or heard of Wool? No. Okay, that's good. Well, Wool was written by Hugh Howey. And Hugh Howey was working in a bookstore, and his wife was working in at the university as a counselor. They were living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Boone, North Carolina, making no money. He had written 2 previous books, which went nowhere. He sold them on Amazon for 99 cents a piece, total 1,000 copies sold, so he wasn't getting rich. He started writing Wool, and he went to the same publishers he'd gone to before, and all the publishers turned him down yet again, just flat out turned him down. He wrote the first few chapters, and he said, well, I'm going to do this differently. So he went to Goodreads. Do any of you use Goodreads? So some of you do. So he went to Goodreads. He found the 30 most influential science fiction reviewers on Goodreads, free service, and he reached out to them, and he gave them each the first 3-4 chapters of the book, and said, tell me what you think, give me feedback. I'd love it, from an editorial perspective. They gave him feedback, but they loved the book. So they told their friends about it. And he was selling it for 99 cents, just the first 4 chapters on Amazon.com. Another free service that he could take advantage of. And from there, he started rolling. Then he wrote the next set of chapters. He got the same reviewers to review it again. Again, didn't cost him a penny. Sold those for 99 cents. Sales started moving up. Then he completed the book, pulled together for $5.99, and sales started rocketing. And he used all social media. He used Twitter. He used Facebook. He used free platforms. His PR department was the PR department of one being him. His publisher was the publisher of one being him, and Amazon, who didn't really care. They just saw another book, their ebook on their platform, and it was selling well. Lo and behold, you all have heard of the Hunger Games. This is very similar to the Hunger Games, so it's a dystopian world. And by the time this book was completed, he was up to selling 50,000 copies a month at $5.99, and he was keeping 70% of that himself. And then Amazon said, well, let's just try something. He said, they reached out to him. Finally, they reached out and said, hey, Hugh, it looks like you're doing well. Let's talk. So they said, Hugh, let's just try we'll do it for one day, 99 cents, and see what happens. 20,000 copies sold in one day, 99 cents. So what happened next? The publishers came calling him, and they all wanted the rights, and they offered him millions of dollars. And he said, I will never, ever sell the digital rights, ever. but I will sell the hard copy rights for millions of dollars. And finally, one of them bought the hard copy rights for over $2 million. Plus, he gets the royalties as they sell them. And then the next group that came along was the movie studios, and he sold the movie rights for several $1 million. And then he wrote Shift, and he wrote Dust, the next 2 books in the series. He's now a multimillionaire. These books came out starting in early 2012, so it's only been a couple of years. So he went from nothing, living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Boone, North Carolina, barely able to make his rent, didn't spend a penny on marketing, but utilized all these platforms, all these free platforms, and now is a multimillionaire book author with his own website, with a huge fan base. He's going to have movies out about his books, and he's going to do the next Hunger Games. That's digital disruption. He has totally disrupted the publishing industry. They now are scouring Amazon for these guys. They are desperate to get to these guys before their sales start kicking up, because once their sales kick up, these guys realize they never want to give up their digital rights at all, because they're keeping 70% instead of 10 to 15%, which is what the typical publishing model was. So that is, in a nutshell, what's going on in this space. You look at this and you start looking across all kinds of businesses, there's all kinds of things happening. And that's one of the things that I'm actually researching and writing about is, and this story, I love this story because this is one person by himself taking on the entire publishing industry and winning big time and changing it. So when I look at marketing innovation, I don't look at it as incremental innovation. Incremental innovation is something we all are supposed to be doing, all of us, in our jobs. Operational, that's incremental. If you see something to improve, improve it. Marketing innovation in today's world is taking big leaps, divergent leaps, big steps forward. And so that's the model that I was pursuing. Actually, I talked to lots of innovation leaders, and they said the same thing. Because once the innovation leader gets pulled back into incremental innovation, they become a job shop for the rest of the organization. So most innovation leaders believe they have to be looking at big problems or big opportunities. And if they get pulled back into to do too much incremental innovation, it pulls their teams away from solving and going after those big opportunities. So with that, I started looking at someone local, Chick-fil-A. And I met with them, and they came up with a very innovative program. And one of the things around innovation that I've seen a lot, it's the marriage of customer experience with technology. And it's like digital overlay on top of everything, but there's traditional buried beneath it. So this program, the Daddy Daughter Date Night program, has anyone taken advantage of that with their kids? So, I see a couple nodding heads, a couple hands. So this was started in Olaf, Kansas by one operator. And he noticed that fathers and daughters weren't talking to each other when they came to his store. They would buy the food, daughter would go off and just play in the play yard. They were not communicating. So he said, wouldn't it be nice if I created a special 5-star experience in a Chick-fil-A, white tablecloth for part of the restaurant, and it was reservation only, and you had to reserve yourself through an online reservation system. Wouldn't it be nice to have that? So he created an evening like that. He did 4 sittings, and he sold it out. And people came in, fathers and daughters were talking, they loved the experience, it went great. He actually, when the operators meeting happened here in Atlanta with the CEO, he ran up to the CEO. The CEO had this whole other speech what he was going to do. He ran to the CEO and said, this is what I did, this is what happened, oh my gosh. And the hyper-local, social media was off the charts. And the CEO just completely changed the speech and talked about this program. They then rolled it out to multiple markets, and then it actually expanded to father-son days, father-daughter, grandparents. And what they started seeing was multiple generations actually taking advantage of this. They'd see kids, parents, grandparents all coming together to go to these nights. They had the limousines, they had horse carriages. Some of the operators went crazy with this and really did an amazing event. What did it do? Whole customer experience, it did the thing that they wanted most. It got the kids to love the brand. It got the parents who were paying for it to love the brand. It got grandparents who got involved to love the brand. So what do they all think? They love the brand. And what happens when those kids become customers? They're going to love the brand, and they're going to take their kids there too. So it was started out as something very small, innovation in the local place, turned into something very large, and turned into something that actually can change the relationship with their customers. And that's the things you have to look for. Innovation can come from all kinds of places, from all of Kansas of all, for this one. And one of the things that Chick-fil-A just did, have any of you heard about the Hatch or visited the Hatch? Anyone? Oh, one person, John. So the Hatch is their innovation center right across the street from their headquarters. And Steve Nevedek he runs this, and he's actually a 20-plus year Chick-fil-A employee. He's running the Hatch. And what he had found, and the executive team found as well, is they had, and he described it this way, he says, we have the Oreo cookie problem. The executives know we need to innovate. We are under the gun. McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, those guys want us now. Chick-fil-A is a big company, 4.6 billion. They're adding 80 restaurants a year, growing rapidly. So they're very successful. Executives know that they have to keep innovating to keep winning. The new employees know they have to keep innovating to keep winning because customer behavior is changing rapidly, right? We're all adopting technology. We're all having higher expectations of technology. Guess what the group in the middle, he called them, that's the white stuff in the middle between the Oreo cookie. They all were promoted to be risk averse because everything they did had to be perfect or it wasn't going to be launched. And he said, we did not have any permission to fail. So they created the Hatch, an innovation center, as a place where they can experiment, they can try new things. They run marketing hackathons, and marketing hackathons is kind of an interesting term, but where marketers come together who have not worked together and work on solving big problems. IT people coming together to work on solving big problems. It's an amazing space, and it's local to us. And as long as you're not a competitor, they're pretty open to letting people come in and take a look and see what they're doing. So I always advise people to take a look and see what they're doing. But that's an example of an innovation center and what they're trying to accomplish in that space. They do everything, branding, operations, everything they experiment in there. They put people on tricycles to act as cars going around and see how they can take advantage of, eliminate bottlenecks. So one of the big things, if you notice at Chick-fil-A, if you go during lunchtime, during high rush hours, that they now have iPads, and the people have iPads and they come out and take your orders, because they found they can reduce the time spent dramatically. So they've integrated iPads with operations, with technology. It's an interesting space. Another player, 7-Eleven. And the one thing you've noticed is, I'm not talking about Starbucks, Nike, Coca-Cola, which everyone talks about. I want to talk about guys who actually are different businesses that have to survive and innovate. 7-Eleven. Now, 7-Eleven is not here in Georgia, but have any of you been to a 7-Eleven? Okay, good, yeah. Convenience store. Actually, you guys are kind of a little bit higher income for their typical audience. I am too. But 7-Eleven, they have 8,000 stores, 9.5 million transactions a day roughly in the United States. They're actually a global brand, and you actually get different experiences around the world. They were a transaction-focused company. In other words, get people into the stores, drive them in there, and get them to do things, right? Just full-on transaction base. Anything they could do, did that. So they came with this program called 7-Election. And previous to this, they had a Slurpee Nation program, which is similar to Coca-Cola Rewards. And they kind of learned that they could collect really interesting data about SKUs and what people were doing, flavors and so on. They came with 7-Election, they thought, well, we'll just do something kind of funny around Obama and Romney. It'll drive store traffic, we can make a lot of noise about it. I mean, it really wasn't thought of much beyond that strategically. It was thought, we'll just take advantage of the opportunity right now. Well, what happened was they put these red coffee cups and blue coffee cups in all their stores. And they said, come in and buy coffee with the party you're going to vote for, the president you're going to vote for. Well, lo and behold, the pollsters started looking at the data, because they actually published the data on their website, and they were right. Every county that they ran this program in, they got who won the county correct. They didn't get the exact percentages right, but they got who won, which was the most important thing of all. It doesn't matter if you win by 1/10% or 7%, you won. So that's what they got that data, and they looked at that and they go, at first it was kind of pithy, and finally, if you actually look at some of the press releases they put out, it was all about just getting people in. They wanted the controversy. People saying, this is horrible, oh my God, someone's taking advantage of the situation. It was great. They drove store traffic, but the data was highly valuable. From that, they said, we need to look at our world in a different way. And they actually, that tagline of their delivering convenience to the world is their North Star. That's the way they think of themselves. How do we deliver convenience? So with that, with data, delivering convenience, what could they do? They decided that they were going to unleash that data to partners. They have created 48 APIs and growing. And they give that to agency partners and technology partners, and they say, what could we do? What new things could we do? And the other thing that they did was said, we're going to set a big audacious goal for our organization. And this is a convenience store. By 2020, 50% of all of our revenue is going to be derived from digital. They're not even sure what that's going to mean, but they think that every store, and this is not disintermediation like e-commerce, this is the stores are going to be deriving revenue by digital. So they see the stores as a hub for digital. So it's customer experience, it's digital overlaid on top of it, it's all integrated so they can deliver a whole new experience, new sets of services, new sets of products. And the first thing that they came up with, they actually came up with a feature phone app, surprisingly enough, was their first app. Their next app was this one, is their smartphone app. This app changes content in context. So if you are in Texas and it's the morning, it starts offering you breakfast items, lunch items, and so on. they're actually adding more and more features to it so that when you're near store 7022, if store 7022 is offering certain promotions, this app will start grabbing that content and presenting it to anyone who's local to that store. That's the type of things they're doing with digital and with mobile that changes the game. And this is a convenience store company, right? So there's other companies out there that are doing the same thing. So one of the things that I did when I was doing research was I looked at innovation labs, innovation centers, and so these were a couple examples. 7-Eleven has an innovation team, and I asked them what process they're running. And this process is a 6-stage process, and it's probably hard for those of you in the back to see, but it's ideate, imagine, pilot, validate, launch, and learn. And the key things, kind of the key angles of this, and it's a life cycle, it's not a funnel. Everyone kept saying it's not a funnel anymore, it's a life cycle, because an idea that we have today that won't work, maybe an idea that works 6 months from now, 18 months from now, don't lose it, keep it in check, but keep going. And the other key thing that everyone told me over and over again was in the learn phase, which is the post-mortem phase, learn from the failures. The best innovators take the failures and they go and dig deep on them. You know, there's a lot of companies that when you have a failure, the best thing to do is just bury it. Not the innovators. The innovators say, we got to learn from that failure, we got to understand what happened and why it happened. So that's a real key learning from this. And then another thing that came up was what talent do they need? They needed a role like a product manager role. So for those of us in technology, product manager role, very traditional. I was a product manager back in the day at Intel. But they also have a business developer, business negotiator role as part of the innovation team. They have a customer experience, user experience role. They have a data scientist role. They have a developer architect role, and they bring them all together. It's a multidisciplinary team, and I've heard this over and over again. You can think of them as cells. They bring them together to work on a problem or an opportunity as a team, and then if it works, they go off and operationalize it. If it doesn't, they go on and work on another problem, and they might even break up as a team. And not only are brands doing this, but agencies are doing this as well. I was on a phone call with an agency today, and this is actually their model. And they bring them back and forth as they're working on problems and they're working on clients. So one of the fun things I did was I actually looked at innovation labs. It's a little hard to see from the back, but innovation labs are being built by all kinds of players. Obviously Chick-fil-A built one here, Coca-Cola built their experience center, and you have the AT&T Foundry. But people are building labs in different spaces and for different reasons. Some people are building labs to change the culture of their company. So they're focused on that. So Chick-fil-A's lab is more to change the culture of the company and create innovation across the entire company than just to create innovations out of the lab itself. So that's the way they look at it. You can look at, like Comcast put a lab in Silicon Valley. Their goal is to actually operationalize the technology and technology transfer back into the headquarters. So they want to be as close to where technology is being developed as possible. They actually have multiple labs. That's just one of those labs. Another one is Aetna, which is an insurance company, has created, I call it a virtual lab. They have a team, and they've decided instead of having a space, they would focus on talent. So bring the talent together. They have actually now created 2, in the last 18 months, brand new businesses for their insurance company out of that team. They didn't expect to do that much that fast. Usually, you have to give these guys about a 2-year window to actually get some pilots going and to do something. Aetna actually created 2 whole businesses in that time frame. And then there's the Outpost virtual labs, and there's a lot of players doing that. One of the more interesting ones is Coca-Cola with a virtual team in the Bay Area. But Coca-Cola also has their own startup accelerator in Mexico City, which is really interesting. So not very many brands actually built out their own startup accelerator. And finally, the last one is actually working within a startup accelerator. PepsiCo, for example, actually works in WeWork labs in New York. So they don't have their own space. They put their people in a startup accelerator, kind of like what we have here in Atlanta Tech Village. So those are some of the examples of labs, and I can go into more depth on that if you'd like to talk afterwards. So here's kind of just to close out recommendations. So innovation, not just incremental, must be your focus. That's what I'm seeing a lot of companies say now. They've got to innovate because customer behavior is changing rapidly. Looking at kids and how fast they're adopting things, looking at adults and how fast we're adopting things. And then I always suggest, no matter what part you play, since we're all here, go to Atlanta Tech Village. It's amazing. There's 100 startups sitting in there. You just want to go and kind of experience it. Every Friday they have an event where they showcase some of them. And I think you'd be more than welcome there. And then finally, visit someone's innovation center who's not your competitor, obviously. So if you're not in the quick serve restaurant, we've got one local here with Chick-fil-A, and they're usually pretty open about letting outsiders in as long as they don't compete with them. So it's an interesting space to go see what they're up to and why they're doing what they're doing. And with that, I'm going to hand it back.